Football with Farhan and Moj. This is week 3 of our soft launch. We're getting ready to actually get on camera September 7th when we actually get this thing going. Are you sure you want to be on camera?
No, I don't. I've looked into some, feature. What do they call that? Feature enhancement. It's pricey, man. It costs money.
Yeah, so but the features that you want to enhance are from the neck up.
Yeah, well, that's
you've been worried about other features.
No, everything. Don't worry about that stuff. That's perfectly fine. That's in working order.
The sponsors have spoken. They want Moj on camera. Our sponsors include Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance. Has your benefits plan evolved, or is it time for a second opinion? Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance includes all the employee benefits you can expect, from health and dental to critical illness to 24/7 telemedicine, even accounting, HR, and legal experts. Chambers plan the employee benefits of tomorrow, today.
And of course, West Coast Auto Group serving the Tri-City area, the Lower Mainland for over 50 years. Great job there, starting with my guy, Ron Jones, the patriarch, as they call it. And of course, Scotty and Michelle, the kids running the dealerships now and doing a great job. Check them out online at westcoastautogroup.com. Go visit them, by the way, just over the bridge in Maple Ridge.
You're going to go golfing with them, so they want to see you on TV, and they want to see you golf. We have got an action-packed show. Later on in this hour, Craig Wolfley from the Pittsburgh Steelers radio broadcast will join us. He is their color commentator, former Pittsburgh lineman. We'll get into what's going on with Chase Claypool, Big Ben, and everybody else in Pittsburgh.
AFC North,
which, for my money, is the toughest division in football. We'll also get into what happened in Seattle, coming up in Hawk Talk a little bit later. Jamal Adams, the Prez, is back in Seattle. We'll take you through your fantasy picks, all sorts of props and bets. And,
I got a lock, by the way, when it comes to a prop bet. A lock.
You don't want to tease us?
I'm teasing you right now. It's a lock. You're going to have to stick around and find out what that lock is. I don't give out locks. This is a lock. All right? That's how good this bet is.
First week of preseason. Now, look, you can only take so much out of preseason because so many starters are sitting and watching. But when you look at some of these rookies and look at especially some of these Canadians, a lot to digest when it comes to preseason. The NFL preseason is shorter this year, just 3 games, unless, of course, you're Pittsburgh and Dallas because they had the extra Hall of Fame game. But the NFL season, the preseason is shorter because the regular season is longer. That's going to affect props and bets and things like that. College football is coming up. The CFL has been through week 2, so we have got much, much more coming up. Football with Farhan and Moj.
Has your employee benefits plan evolved, or is it time for a second opinion? Simple to use but strong on features, Chambers Plan is trusted by more than 30,000 businesses. Every plan includes convenient access to free world-class services that support the health of your business and the well-being of your employees, including 24-hour medical support and business assistance services. Chambers Plan, all the essentials and so much more tailored to your team members. For more information or to request a quote, visit chamberplan.ca. Chambers Plan, the employee benefits of tomorrow, today.
Football with Farhan and Moj, brought to you by Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance and West Coast Auto Group. Moj, we got some preseason action. We got a full slate of preseason games. And it was a real opportunity for some Canadian youngsters that got drafted in last year's draft to kind of show what they could do. And look, a number of great rookie performances. We'll get into that as the segment progresses. But which ones jumped out at you?
Well, one of them you can talk about is Chuba Hubbard with the Panthers. He goes into that pile, emerges 59 yards later for a touchdown. Tells you a little bit about his ability to keep his feet moving, find open space. Only problem there is you got a guy named McCaffrey ahead of you. So, if you're in a fantasy pool, maybe you handcuff him, one of your late picks with McCaffrey, but for the most part, very impressive start for him.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad late pick in a fantasy draft because when you look at a guy like Hubbard and McCaffrey, look, McCaffrey's never been healthy, right? Last year he missed 13 games. That's tough. Really muscle-bound athlete. There's always a pull and a tweak somewhere along the line. On top of that, they move him around so much. So if you can get that number 2 job and now all of a sudden McCaffrey plays in the slot, Hubbard can play in the backfield, so much attention on McCaffrey. I think he could be a pretty good late pick as a sleeper.
And the other thing, too, he had that great junior year, not as good as a senior season, so maybe a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to go out there and prove people wrong, that's saying, hey, you know what? My stock hasn't fallen. I'm that back that you saw in my junior year, not necessarily my senior year.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they want to see him catch out of the backfield. He's had a few drops in that regard, but running the football, everything has looked good. Pass protection has also looked good. The guy that really jumped out to me, though, Josh Palmer, taken in the 3rd round. This guy had a fantastic senior season at Tennessee, given the fact their quarterback play was not good, okay? And you can only wonder where he could have gone from that point on. The draft process, he was really able to elevate with his play at the Senior Bowl. 6 catches on 7 targets, only 36 yards in that game. But this guy's drawn a lot of praise from coaches, from veteran players on the defensive side of the ball, from Justin Herbert, his quarterback. He could step in as that third receiver with the Chargers with an elite quarterback and have a, I don't want to say Chase Claypool year or Justin Jefferson year, but this guy could be pretty good as a rookie.
The opportunity's there for him. That number 3 receiver for the Chargers, there's no clear-cut favorite. Maybe he's the guy that emerges and gets some numbers.
Let's talk a little bit of COVID, because we're not past that. The Atlanta Falcons, the first team to be 100% vaccinated. How big of a deal is that?
I think it's a big deal, even though people might be downplaying it if a team's at 85 or 90%. But here's the thing. What happens if you're that guy who's part of the 15% that's not vaccinated and winds up having your team forfeit a game?
Yeah.
You talk about pressure. You talk about, perhaps tension in a locker room. I mean, if guys start losing paychecks because you got COVID because you're not vaccinated, it's not a good thing. So for me, the fact that the Falcons have this issue resolved, they're out there 100% vaccinated, it's huge. And even from a player's perspective, think about this. Say if you and I are competing for a spot on special teams, you're vaccinated, I'm not. If you're the coaching staff and all things are equal, who are you going to look at? Who are you going to take?
Yeah, bottom of the roster, it's going to matter. And of course, again, 100%. As far as the league averages are concerned, 91.7% of players have been vaccinated. 15 teams are above the 95% threshold, and given 85 as the number, that's pretty good league-wide. I don't think you're going to see any games forfeited this year. Too much at stake, and the line for what constitutes a forfeiture and an outbreak and contact tracing, all of that is going to be completely different. And then you've also got Vegas, who have now just announced you've got to be fully vaccinated. You need proof of vaccination in order to attend a Vegas game. And look, people are just, they're clamoring for tickets. I don't think Vegas is going to have a problem selling out, regardless of those restrictions.
Yeah, well, bottom line is this, too. It's about safety. It's about public safety. And if that means everybody needing to be fully vaccinated to get a ticket, so be it. I'm not going to argue that point.
A couple of players I want to get into. One, Nick Bosa is now back at practice later this week.
Whoa, he's not a quarterback.
I know, listen, for everybody that doesn't know,
here?
This guy gives me grief about talking quarterbacks. He sent an email last night to myself and our producer, Michael Toy, and you know what he said? More quarterback talk.
No.
He asked for more quarterbacks. We were looking at him. I thought I was on the wrong email.
You're going to talk about Bosa. You're going to talk about the 49ers and the impact that he can have on the defensive line. You're coming around. That's good.
D lineman, what do you think? How big of a deal is it?
Here's the thing. I mean, he's the type of guy that if you have at 100% on your defensive line, if you can get to the quarterback with 4, you're in great shape. I mean, that's any team that can get to a quarterback with 4 rushers, you're in phenomenal shape. And not only does Bosa add what he brings to the table, he makes everyone else better around him because he's going to draw a lot of attention. Whether it's somebody chipping off him, whether it's a double team, whether it's a back in the backfield, you name it. He's a guy that draws attention, and it should free up some other players along that front.
Well, and when you can have a guy like Bosa in, it really affects your offense, right? Because you're not going to be asked to do as much, given the impact he could have defensively. And, we're going to get into the quarterback situation about what they do between Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Got to do it at some point. Listen, here's the other yin and yang. It's not just going to be D-line versus quarterbacks. We're going to have Washington talk versus Ohio State talk, because every time we ask Michael, our producer, for suggestions, he wants to talk about Ohio State. I always want to talk about Washington. College football's coming. We'll talk about that a little later, too.
Hey, we'll talk about my Trojans as well.
I'm not going there. San Francisco, as we talk about Bosa, a former San Francisco quarterback in Alex Smith. We knew he was going to retire, not play this year, and he's got a job in the booth with ESPN. How will you remember Alex Smith, the player?
Well, I'll say this. First off, number 1 pick overall with the 49ers. I remember when he was drafted, our colleague Chris Burns and I had a great conversation with Phil Simms from CBS, and number 1 pick overall, he's going to be a great quarterback. And Phil said, hold on a second. He's going to be a good quarterback. I mean, he's a good player. He's not going to be a franchise-type guy, a great player. And that's exactly what happened with his career. So you look at his career, some people might look at it and say, well, he's a number 1. He didn't live up to the expectations of being a 1, but he had a good career, and basically that was his ceiling, so to speak. But when you think of Alex Smith, the biggest thing you think of now is perseverance. You're talking about a man who underwent 17 operations to get back onto the field. And folks, we're not talking at the start of his career where he's looking at millions of dollars and saying, hey, I can't leave this on the table. I want to get back there. I love the game, but still I have this financial incentive. This is a guy who was at the end of his career. He could have easily walked away. And he said, I'm not ending it on those Joe Theismann-like terms. 33 years to the day, by the way, Theismann and Smith. You know that? So here's a guy who goes through 17 operations to do what he has to do to get back to play football. Man, you talk about dedication, you talk about perseverance. Alex Smith is at the top of the list.
Well, and also there's a selflessness component to Alex Smith as well, because you saw what happened with him in San Francisco. You lose the job to Colin Kaepernick, and he handled that gracefully. Then he goes to Kansas City. You wind up grooming your mentor in Patrick Mahomes. That takes a lot. And then the story for him to finally come back last year, a lot everybody can learn
And
from.
you know the thing, too, with Alex Smith, if I'm not mistaken, you can probably check this. So stats and research, look into this. Do we have a stats and research? Scotty, your stats and research, look into this. I believe he was on pace for his best ever year stats-wise when they put Kaepernick in for quarterback. Put Kaepernick in at quarterback.
Yeah, and you knew it was a move Harbaugh wanted to make at that time, and he handled it as well as you could. I think he's going to do great on television because he's got so much perspective and has been through so much and knows how to handle it. Time now for Go for Two, where we pick a topic and go back and forth on it a little bit. Which rookie quarterback impressed you the most this weekend?
I know who you're going to pick. You're going to pick Justin Fields, right?
It's the Ohio State thing, Michael. We gotta do it.
Yeah, I know that. But when you look at Mac Jones and what he did, I think a great analysis, Dominic Foxworthy from ESPN talked about it. He said, there are NFL open throws and there are Alabama open throws, right?
Alabama is wide open.
Yeah, and I thought it was a great analogy, and he raved about what Jones did in that game, making NFL open-like throws. And I thought it was a great point. I mean, yeah, it's okay to throw to receivers running by a guy by like 5 or 10 yards. But when you have that small window in the National Football League that's the size of a breadbasket and you're making those throws, I think it's a good thing. And I agree with Foxworth on this one. If you look at all the quarterbacks, the rookie quarterbacks in that first week, the five first rounders, he probably answered the most questions with his performance.
See, I like Justin Fields. He was asked to do a lot, and he delivered. He bounced back from an early interception, did it with his arm, did it with his legs, completed 70% of his passes. His passer rating was over 100, threw for one and rushed for one as well. So, he showed what Chicago fans wanted to see, what Chicago themselves, what they want to see. There's that excitement. There's that dynamic athlete. And, I think it's going to be really difficult for Andy Dalton to keep that job. Now, you talk about Mac Jones. Bill Belichick is not giving up who's going to be his starting quarterback. Cam Newton also having a good camp, even though they're not using him much in the preseason. But Justin Fields, Chicago's saying it's going to be Andy Dalton. I don't know that Nagy's going to be able to continue that much longer.
Well, I mean, clearly Dalton's a placeholder given where he is in his career and what they have invested with Fields. But here's the thing. He brings them athleticism. They've never had that athletic quarterback who can make chicken salad out of you-know-what. And he's that quarterback. The throw to Riley Ridley, that's enough proof for you right there, all right? The guy is an athlete. He can make things happen. And again, it's something that Chicago has never had with the Bears.
Yeah, and they've got to live down giving up Deshaun Watson, despite what he's going through this year. The fact that they took Mitch Trubisky over Mahomes, over Watson, two athletic quarterbacks, I think it matters more now for them to get that right. Tim Tebow, cut by the Jags. Urban Meyer also coached Alex Smith at their time at Utah. Is this a thing?
I mean, is he done?
Why is he done?
Yeah, I mean, he's done now. I mean, he's changed positions. And credit to Tebow, the fact that he even got an invite to an NFL camp to try out as a tight end.
Yeah.
I mean...
But that's not, you knew he was going to get that with Urban.
Yeah, and maybe it was just like, an old favor or whatever you want to call it. But I think we're Tebowed out now.
We are, but here's the thing, why I appreciate what he's doing. How many athletes do you know that are afraid to fail and are afraid of looking bad, right? So yeah, Urban Meyer gave him a favor and did this for him, but he changed positions, just like he changed sports and went to baseball. He wasn't afraid, and he talked about that in his statement, that he wasn't going to let fear of failure take away his opportunities. There's so many athletes out there that just simply, they don't want to try something because they're afraid to look bad. This guy's got a big name, a national stage. People are taking shots at him all the time, but he's like, you know what? I love this so much. I'm going to do it, and that's his legacy.
Forget about athletes. Let's just talk about people in general. How many people out there are afraid to do something, to try something? And, 10, 15, 20 years later down the road, they're like, if I'd only done that, or if I'd done this. Hey, the guy went out there, gave it 100%. He's got no regrets. And as an athlete, that's probably the biggest thing you can hope for at the end of your career, that there's no regrets. He left everything out there.
Two young quarterbacks in Indianapolis who've been meaning to talk about the Colts quarterback situation for a while. We haven't had a chance to yet. Jacob Eason, the second-year player out of Washington. Sam Ehlinger, rookie out of Texas. Both of them fared very well. And you know, the team is confident that they're going to get Carson Wentz back sooner than later. He's out taking part in walkthroughs now. But because of what you saw, do you feel the need to go out and get a veteran quarterback? Do they need Nick Foles? Do they need Gardner Minshew? Or do they just stick with these young guys until Wentz gets back?
Well, I think they're probably going to wind up just sticking with these two young players and find out what they have. Clearly, you're going to get them some reps, some experience. To go out and get a veteran for, a handful of games before Wentz comes back, I don't think it's probably the wisest idea. I just think right now, give these kids some reps, see what they got. And worse comes to worse, you got two kids that gain a little experience. And if you need them down the road, now that at least they know what to deal with.
Yeah, and, you know, and as much as I like my Washington guy, when you look at Sam Ehlinger, if I had a choice, I'd probably start him. And the reason for that is that offensive line is banged up right now. They are struggling at tackle, they're struggling at guard, and you need a guy that can move around. And I think Ehlinger can give them that in a short burst. Again, not the answer, but even when Wentz comes back, he's going to have to deal with some banged up line.
Hey, I got one very quickly before we get to break here. We talked about which quarterback might have the most impact this year in the NFC East. Jalen Hurts, or you're talking Jones and with the Giants. You know, looking at these two quarterbacks, I think one thing really comes to mind. Pro Football Focus did an offensive line ranking at the start of the year. Eagles, I think, are like 14th. The Giants are 32nd. Basically dead last in the league when it comes to offensive line as ranked by Pro Football Focus, which is a great resource, by the way. So when I look at that and I think about Daniel Jones versus Hurts, who's going to have a bigger impact? I don't know if Jones is going to have a chance to make an impact. Hurts might have a chance to make an impact behind that Eagles offensive line.
Yeah, Danny Dimes, he might be on his back a little bit. And then you've also got Saquon Barkley. They're trying to get back into the lineup. Again, not a good situation behind that offensive line. I don't know if Hurts is the guy in Philly, but probably has a greater chance for success given the pieces around him. We're going to take a quick break. Football with Farhan and Moj brought to you by Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance and West Coast Auto Group. When you partner with Blue Recruitment, you not only help your business grow, you also help the community grow around you. Our team works tirelessly to make sure we deliver an exceptional service because we work for you. We work for our associates. We work for everybody. Temporary staffing at its best. Contact us now at 778-928-6745. That's blueinc.com, BLOOINC.com. Football with Farhan and Moj. And before we get started with our next guest, we do want to remind you that our show is brought to you by Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance, which provides comprehensive benefit packages to businesses from one person and up, including home-based businesses. 30,000 businesses and 900 Chambers of Commerce agree. Chambers plan, simple, stable, smart.
And of course, West Coast Auto Group. Check them out just over the bridge in Maple Ridge. Visit them online at westcoastautogroup.com.
At this time, we are delighted to head to Pittsburgh, where we will welcome in Craig Wolfley, who is the color analyst for the Steelers. Craig, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you, gentlemen.
Just one thing before we get rolling on this. Before we get rolling on this interview, I want one thing, Farhan. Craig Wolfley is a master of the English language. Words such as trickeration, hallucination, whatever words he can come up with a T-I-O-N at the end of it. He is phenomenal. So just be on your game when you're interviewing Craig. This is big time here.
So the words are longer than the ones you use.
Much. You like 3, 4, 5 syllables and stuff. It's crazy.
Okay, so we'll keep the syllables short here. Okay, down to 3. Chase Claypool. Craig, how has he looked to you so far in camp and through the preseason?
Well, last year I called him top shelf Canadian bacon. He's done nothing but sizzle since last year. You watch this guy. This guy is big. He's strong. One of the things I just was fascinated by was him last year scoring a touchdown. On the next play, he's L3 on the kickoff team, and he makes a hit. You don't see many China dolls, as we used to call them back in the day, China dolls, which, you know, you can't really say it about Stallworth and Swan, but we did. But anyhow, this kid is a player, and he's really shown an ability now to start digging for the deep ball, some of the nuances of playing the wide receiver. It's coming together. I think this kid is poised and ready for a big year.
I want to ask you about Big Ben and that connection, because I think Ben really had a respect for him early in training camp last year, but we've got a different quarterback who missed a chunk of last year, and now he's, you know, he seems to be completely changed in terms of his diet and his training regimen, a leaner, lighter Ben Roethlisberger. Is that a good thing for him?
Well, I think anytime that you get a little healthier, it can't be a bad thing, can it? You know what I mean? It's just one of those situations where, as you approach that 40-year mark, you take a little bit better care of yourself. You think, it's like now I'm 63. And I think, if I'd known God was going to let me live this long, I might have, taken a little bit of care of myself here. It's just one of those things. So, and obviously for Ben, he looks great. He's throwing the ball well. We'll see what happens.
Craig, what's the gut feeling in Pittsburgh with this Steeler team this year? Did they feel they have enough to win that AFC North?
Oh, I think they do. Look, in Pittsburgh, hope springs eternal. I mean, you just had 14 years of 500-plus wins, winning percentages every year with Mike Tomlin. Even if you think, got questions with the offensive line. Defensively, is Schobert going to be the guy that makes a difference on the inside there? These are questions that need to be answered, but they will be answered. People understand that it's coming around. This offensive line, when you have to go out and get 4/5 of your starting offensive line, that can be a problem, but it's starting to come together. We saw the number ones for the first time take the field in practice together with the first group all together. So you hope that this group comes along and gets the job done.
Would you say that the Ravens are the favorite because the bookies like the Ravens? I like the Ravens. That's enough said right there. But, I mean, they've improved their receiving core. I mean, they got that defense, and they got that guy behind quarterback named Jackson.
Yeah, that Lamar Jackson guy really makes things kind of rough. But I look at it this way. You know what? The Steelers were the team that rolled 11-0. They had some injury issues. They had some functional issues going with the running game. Look at you come out and start playing slobber knock football. You go out there and start beating some people. It's going to roll together really, really well. I think the running game is going to be something that's going to surprise a lot of people once this kid Najee Harris gets it down and gets going. This guy is really fun to watch, man. He's got such quicks. He's got this. His see-do is so quick. It's a see-did. By the time he already did it.
Well, in watching him play at Alabama, you knew that this guy was a complete player. He was physical. He could do it so many ways. And, every team wants to establish the run. But in Pittsburgh, how essential is it to their absolute identity? This is who they are.
There's no question. Look, there's been a long legacy of great runners, and we have been particularly very fortunate and blessed with Hall of Famers named Harris at the running back. So Najee Harris is simply one of these guys that, you hope has got that little bit of magic, that little bit of Franco Harris magic that can come along. And the running game last year, that was the big problem. How can you not run the ball in the Northeast in December football? I mean, you've got to be able to run the ball, and it was just very unfortunate that the running game just kind of bailed on them. They weren't getting any movement at the point of attack. Everything was shotgun. So now you're seeing a lot more of the Matt Canada offense where he's got the shiny things going on pre-snap and post-snap. You got, instead of a 2-point stance, the guys are up front. They're grunting it out in 3-point stance. They got some play action, getting under center. Now you're banging away for 2 to 5 yards a carry in training camp and pop a big one now and then. So you got that whole play action thing coming up where you can get something happening over the middle when you suck those linebackers up. So I look forward to what is going to be unveiled in the Matt Canada offense.
Well, Craig, it was great talking Steeler football with you, getting an update on Chase Claypool, among others, and look forward to seeing the Steelers this year and hopefully getting you back on board in a short period of time.
Absolutely. Always nice to talk with you guys.
Great job by Craig Wolfley, as always. But I got to tell you, I still am not a complete believer in that Pittsburgh offensive line. I think they got some work to do to get that done so they can get that running game going.
Yeah, I know Craig talked about the injuries in the second half of the season impacting that team. But still, when I look at that AFC North, I just look at what Baltimore has on defense. I look what they have at quarterback. Hey, Roethlisberger's not getting any younger. Jackson, and plus the other thing, too, they gave him some weapons. They got Watkins. They got a couple of draft picks in there as well. I think they're going to be fine at receiver.
Time now for one a bet. Dak Prescott on the over-under. Passing yards, 4,850.5 passing yards, minus 110 to bet. $10 wins you $19.09. Is he going over? Is he going under?
This is the lock that I was talking about. You look at his numbers last year with McCarthy running the show. I mean, if you prorate them over a full season, He's on pace for like over 6,000 yards, never mind 4,800. With that type of a buffer, are you kidding me? 1,200 yards to play with? I am taking Dak Prescott on the over. In fact, soon as I get off here, I'm going online, I'm phoning the book. I don't care. Maybe I'll do both. I'll go online and I'll phone the book. I'm taking the over 48.50. I think
you are so wrong. I am
please.
taking the under on this. There was no way he was going to sustain that number throughout last year. I know he's got an extra game. He's also coming in with a shoulder injury. He's starting to get a few throws in this week, but I do not believe he can put up those kinds of numbers again.
Hey, do the math. 7.7 career yards per attempt. If he puts the ball in the air 800 times, even it's Simon Fraser. People, you don't even want to know about Simon Fraser. It's a very lackluster university. Even a Simon Fraser grad like you could figure out that's over 4,800.
Did you even attend classes at UBC?
Yeah, I did.
Listen,
I did a lot of case studies.
You market
Molson, Kokanee, Labatt.
It's a great question though, as far as that number, 6,000. People are talking about that as a possibility. We've had 5,000-yard quarterbacks with a 17-game schedule. Can we get to 6,000? I think that might still be a little high. Dak Prescott will be below 48.50. Dalvin Cook, meanwhile, to lead the league in total rushing yards at plus 550. Bet $10 to win 65. We're not putting a number on it. Does Dalvin Cook lead the league in total rushing yards?
You know, the number one competition would probably be Henry out of Tennessee. Derrick Henry, great backup.
Kamara, too, out of New Orleans.
Yeah, but the thing is, they got this guy named Jones playing receiver in Tennessee this year.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to have a little bit more of a balanced offense. Maybe Henry doesn't get as many touches. So I'm going to go with Cook. I like Cook's chances. And with the Saints, maybe we'll get into their quarterbacking situation later on, Ann, because it's right now, nobody can keep the ball in Saints' possession in New Orleans. The ball security is horrible with either Winston or Hill. So I like Dalvin Cook.
And their quarterback play is ordinary. They're going to need to lean on Dalvin Cook because you don't want to lean too much on Kirk Cousins. AFC Championship to win, the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 240, closely followed, well, not that closely, Buffalo at 550, the Ravens at 550, the Browns, Cleveland, fourth best odds to win the AFC at 800. I know you're not a Browns believer. Who do you like in the AFC?
Cleveland.
Cleveland?
No.
Cleveland.
No. Cleveland, they'll find a way to screw it up. It's Cleveland. Okay, forget about it. I don't even want to analyze Cleveland. It's Cleveland. They'll find a way.
This is the analysis they come to this show for, Moj.
The team they got to watch is the Ravens, and I'll tell you why. First off, their defense, we all know what the Ravens can do on defense. They play in that, as Craig Wolfley called it, that slobber knocker division of the AFC North. You look at the fact that they've given some weapons to Jackson this year. They brought in Sammy Watkins. They got a couple of draft picks in Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace. I love what they're doing in terms of bringing some help on the offensive side of the ball. I love their defense. I love the Ravens to win this division. And I give them a very good chance even to win the AFC Championship.
We'll get into Hawk Talk in the next segment, but the NFC West, who do we like to win that? You've got the 49ers at plus 180, just edging out the Rams at plus 190, Seahawks at plus 275, and the Cardinals at plus 650. I know we got a lot of Seahawk fans that listen to this show, and they're going to not like seeing Seattle third. I'm taking the Rams at plus 190 because they've got a legitimate quarterback now, along with all their weapons. You've got the best D lineman in football in Aaron Donald. You've got the best cornerback in Jalen Ramsey. That defense is solid, and now they've got a big-time quarterback. Finally, Sean McVay is going to get to do what he truly wants to do at that position. I like the Rams.
You know what? We're supposed to have differing opinions. But in this instance, I'll actually have to give him credit. Probably looked over at my notes, but I'll say this.
You have
right.
notes?
I do. Stafford, you're right. He brings them that stability at quarterback, that NFL elite caliber type quarterback. And I'm using that because people say Stafford elite, but put him in that system, and we're going to see what Matthew Stafford can really do. San Francisco, the fact that their quarterbacking situation is kind of in flux, and that tells you something about the 49ers. When you look at their odds and their roster, they're right there with the Rams, and tells you how great that roster is, that people like the 49ers that much, even though they have these question marks surrounding their quarterback.
Yeah, and I think they'll go back and forth at the position. I don't think they're going to make a clean decision. You'll see, interesting in Chicago and San Francisco how they handle that, because both teams are going to have some issues at the position going forward until they give in and go young, but the rest of their rosters are built to win now. You don't like betting preseason, so we had talked about whether or not we do that. You don't like preseason, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
You go with the Ravens because they always win in the preseason. But more importantly, any preseason game you've got this year, take the under. Under last week was 14-2. So, yeah, you don't want to pick winners, but you take the under in preseason.
If you're betting preseason football, you need therapy. That's all I'm going to say.
People who listen to us generally.
Okay, you people listening right now and watching, you need therapy if you're betting preseason. I mean, who knows in preseason? You're right, bet the under. Who knows who's going to play, who's going to start? We don't know. Week 1 rolls around, I know who the quarterback is of the Steelers. I know who the running back's going to be, you know, with the Seahawks. I know those things. I don't know what's happening in preseason.
All right, well, we'll get to the CFL a bit later. CFL through 2 weeks. 7-1. Take the under in those games. Real quick, college football, top 25 came out this week. We've got another week to do a show before they get to the first games. I'm so looking forward to September 4th games. But Alabama, plus 250 against the field. Who do you like?
Take Alabama at plus 250. That's not a bad wager. But before we talk football, I'm going to say one thing. This guy beside me here, if he could do anything in life, if he won like that big jackpot, Mega Millions, Lotto Max, whatever, he would just go like week to week to week and just watch college football again. Like that's like people don't understand how passionate this guy is. Forget about the NFL and the CFL. You talk NCAA with this guy, now you got him. You got him going, so to speak. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun talking college football.
You know, and I'm
going to have to keep up.
You will. And I actually went Saturday. I took my son Lucas. We went down to University of Washington, watched their scrimmage. That's how much I love it.
Yeah,
I went to Seattle to watch a scrimmage.
2 hours to drive to watch a scrimmage.
It was fabulous. I just couldn't get enough because I didn't get to go to Husky Stadium last year. Greatest setting in college football. I was pumped to go, and I'm going to get to at least 5 Husky games this year because they don't conflict with Lions games.
I've always said this, especially for our Canadian fans or Canadian listeners. I mean, people in the States, they know what college football is all about. But I think, you know, particularly here in Vancouver, if you haven't experienced a big-time college game, do it. There is nothing like it in terms of the atmosphere. You know, one of the biggest things I love about college football? Just the bands. Yeah, the bands, the ambiance, the sounds. And, like, you know, you're walking around. I remember you were at the game, Texas-Alabama BCS championship game in the Rose Bowl a few years back, and there was like 5 of us, and it was a cool night in Pasadena, and a bunch of us buy hoodies. I was the only guy to buy a Texas hoodie. Everybody else bought Alabama hoodies. One guy didn't buy a hoodie, and we're walking around all night long, and people are like, hey, man, where are your colors? Like,
you got to wear your colors.
You got to wear your colors. Like, he was getting called out because he was wearing black. He wasn't wearing, like, Alabama crimson or Texas burnt orange.
You know, one little known fact, our producer, Michael Toy, he is actually the guy that dots the I in Ohio at Ohio State games. So when we come back, we will get into Hawk Talk. Lots going on with the Seahawks and some CFL as well. Football with Farhan and Moj, brought to you by Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance, which provides comprehensive benefit packages to business from 1 person and up, including home-based businesses. 30,000 businesses and 900 Chambers of Commerce agree. Chambers plan simple, stable, smart.
And, of course, the West Coast Auto Group, Scott Jones, Michelle Jones, the best in the business in terms of selection and service. Check them out at westcoastautogroup.com, just across the bridge in Maple Ridge.
Gain easy access to a diverse talent pool of fractional workers and gig masters in a simple and easy manner to get things done. Leverage time and money to your core business. Visit lemon.com and book a gig master today for our next project. That's LMON.com.
Are you a tech startup or a small business owner? Are you looking for a way to finance or manage your business payroll? Wages Corp is here for you. At Wages Corp, we have cost-effective solutions to help you finance and or run your payroll efficiently so you can get on with running your business and making your dreams come true. We operate throughout Canada and we're here for you. For more information, visit us at wagescorp.com, follow us on LinkedIn, or give us a call at toll-free 1-866-311-4441, extension 401. Wages Corp, for your small business or tech startup, national coverage, locally minded, and here for you.
Welcome back to Football with Farhan and Moj, brought to you by Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance and the West Coast Auto Group. Seahawks lose 20-7 in Vegas. First preseason game. Obviously, the big guns, including Russell Wilson, didn't play. Before we get to Jamal Adams and a few other things revolving the Seahawks, any takeaways from the game?
Well, I mean, you know, you talk to people, you read reports, people are talking about the fact that Dwayne Brown, they missed him on the offensive line. They had a rookie in there, I can't remember his name, Stone Forsythe, pardon me.
Yep.
He struggled. So, I mean, they got to get Dwayne Brown in that left tackle spot, make him an anchor there, hopefully work out all these contract issues. And number 3 receiver. I mean, they've drafted the kid Dwayne Eskridge. He's on the physically unable to perform list, if I'm not mistaken. No one else really stood out of that pack. You know, Freddie Swain's probably going to be in the mix as a 3 or 4, but it comes to receiver depth. It's something the Seahawks have kind of struggled with the last few years. And then the other issue, I think, is cornerback. Their corners were not good in that game, and that's a bit of a concern. They've got those 2 studs at safety in Diggs and Adams, but when it comes to Trey Flowers and Witherspoon, they probably need more production than they got in that game against Vegas.
Yeah, DJ Reed, I think, is going to be a cornerstone for them there. But, the quarterback play, you mentioned, it was ordinary. Now, of course, Russell Wilson didn't play. Geno Smith did play, but then he left the game with a concussion. Alex McGough, Sean Mannion, not much to write home about. So if you're a third receiver or a guy potentially trying to become a third receiver, not the best situation for you to be evaluated in. And then really not much in the way of depth running because, we didn't see Carson, we didn't see Penny, and, the guys behind him, not a lot to write home about as well. So do you throw it out and just look to the next one?
There's a part of me that says you throw it out because of some of the factors that you mentioned, but this is the thing about professional sports and the National Football League. It's up to you to make plays, not to rely on other people. Yeah, it's fine and dandy when you've got pieces around you that all of a sudden make you a better player, but you've got to show something sometimes just on your own, and nobody did that offensively for the Seahawks in that game.
Big news out of Seattle, though, is Jamal Adams, the Prez, finally gets done. 4 years, $70 million. And really, in the last little bit, this came down to structure. And ultimately, it was pretty much what Seattle wanted in the structure. There wasn't, they weren't far apart to begin with. It kind of stayed more in Seattle's favor for what that's worth. He becomes the highest paid safety in the league. He doesn't get paid like a pass rusher, which is what he wanted initially. Why did this take so long, and how important is it that it finally got done before we got too deep into this?
Probably because just something you talked about. He's got a unique skill set, right?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at that type of skill set is who are your comps? How do you define what he should be paid? And, you talked about Adams wanting to be paid like a passer. He's not. He's a safety, right? So, but the way he's utilized a lot of times, perhaps his biggest strength is being that guy they can find a hole for somewhere along that line and jettison him through and create some pressure and wreak some havoc. So I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why it took so long, just because of the unique skill set that he has and the comps that, there are no comps really.
Yeah. Well, and this team couldn't rush the passer till he got there. He really gave them that. And, they brought in Dunlap and a few others, but, he is an exceptional pass rusher, but a lot of that is by position, but he's an average cover guy. Right, as a safety, and you do have to do that from time to time when you play in that position. But I think the one thing he does, and I know this is cliche, it's not a very analytical way of thinking about things, but he brought the Seahawks defense a level of confidence and swagger. I know Bobby Wagner's the heart and soul of that defense, but, the pulse might be the Prez.
What Adams does schematically is he can come at you in so many different ways, right? He can line up just about anywhere on that line of scrimmage in terms of blitzing. And what that does, he's one of those guys that creates doubt for an offense. And that's the big thing. If you can create doubt with your opponent, you're starting to win the game. And when you have Adams, you have to be accountable. You have to hold him accountable. You got to know where he's at. Right? And that's what he brings to the table. He brings that X factor in the sense that he could be here, he could be here. Is he coming? Is he staying? And that creates a lot of doubt.
Yeah, so the two big contract issues for the Seahawks were Adams and Dwayne Brown. They've got to get Dwayne Brown done. And, my understanding is those two aren't far apart as well. But, slowly but surely this group is coming together, and we'll find that out over the next couple of preseason games here. Again, you're not going to get to see a lot of these guys play more than a couple of series, but I think they're where they want to be. I just think the most important thing is now, from a Seahawk perspective, once they get Brown done and the offensive line healthy, is to just really get comfortable within that new offensive scheme with Shane Waldron. Gerald Everett, you're a big fan. You got him as a sleeper pick in your fantasy.
One of the things when you look at, you talked about Shane Waldron. Of course, they had the opportunity to work together previously. He finished third among NFL tight ends last year with 5.9 yards after reception, did Everett. So when you look at what he brings to the table, the fact that he's got a coordinator that likes utilizing him, and tight end is such a thin position in the National Football League. You're looking at Everett, he's probably like a top 25 now. Here's a guy, if used properly and who is exploited like we're anticipating he might be, he could be a top 15 target this year. And if that's the case, you got yourself some value.
And they've been looking to clean up that tight end position now for a couple of seasons. More with Football with Farhan and Moj when we come back. Kidsport believes in the potential of kids and the power of sport to transform lives. Kidsport helps kids get off the sidelines and into the game. All kids deserve a chance to get involved in amateur sport and experience the physical and mental health benefits that can come from a positive sport experience. Kidsport provides support to kids by removing financial barriers that can prevent them from playing organized sport. Help us raise awareness of the program. Simply share the opportunity for a Kidsport grant with families in your life that might need a little extra help. Kidsport covers the registration fees for a season of sport. For more information, visit kidsport.ca and click on Apply for Grant. You'll be directed to one of 40 volunteer-run chapters throughout BC or the Kidsport BC office if your community does not have a local chapter. Help us spread the word all over BC that Kidsport is ready to help so all kids can play. Football with Farhan and Moj as we dive into the CFL Week 2 in the books, and there are some surprises coming out of these first 2 weeks. And we'll get to the lines in a moment, but I also want to talk about some injuries, some big injury news today. If you're the Calgary Stampeders, Bo Levi Mitchell has a broken leg. He's been put on the 6-game injured list. It happened actually in week 1. He got hit late by Charleston Hughes. Charleston's knee went into the upper fibula of his leg, so he's going to be out for a while. UBC product Michael O'Connor will get his first starts, plural, because he's going to be in for a bit. And for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Shaq Evans, their top receiver, has a foot injury. He was blocking on a play for Cody Fajardo, got rolled into, and he's going to be out for 6 weeks as well. Probably not as big a deal for Saskatchewan. They're 2-0. They've got a lot of depth in the receiving core, experienced and Canadians and otherwise. But for the Calgary Stampeders, this is a tough loss at 0-2.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 0-2, what do you look for? You look for veteran leadership. You look for those guys that can help you get out of that hole. You lose 2 home games, and now you lose Bo Levi Mitchell. It's going to be an uphill climb. Michael O'Connor, of course, the UBC kid, led them to a Vanier Cup championship.
You were there.
I was there. He knows what it takes to win at the college level, but it's a different animal at the pro level, right? So he's going to have to gain the trust and respect of his teammates, and he's going to have to do that by playing well. I look at Calgary, and I said this even at the start of the year, because they've had so many losses. You look at their receiving core, it's all in Toronto now from 2 years ago. I think the thing with the Stampeders is this, they're a team in transition, and they needed Bo Levi Mitchell to be healthy just to be, quote, competitive and try to, compete for the Western Division title. But with no Bo Levi Mitchell now, man, it could be a real bad year in Calgary.
Yeah, and it does speak to Bo's toughness, because he knew after that week 1 game what the diagnosis in the leg was. He knew that it was broken, yet he tried to play against the BC Lions and played the full game. Granted, wasn't the same Bo Levi Mitchell with 4 interceptions, but it certainly speaks to the man's toughness, and now he's likely to be out 6 weeks. And, you talk about transition. Calgary's been able to do it every year. They don't pay free agents. They get guys in. I think the 2 years off, and now they've had 2 years worth of free agent transition, I think that's hurt them. You talk about the receiving core. Outside of Kamar Jordan, they don't have a single receiver that's had more than 20 starts in the Canadian Football League. That's tough. Everybody's having to elevate a spot, and they're not used to that. I think that's difficult for them, and their offensive line is not good enough. Not the best situation for Michael. Now, the reports on Michael coming out of training camp, they love the way he understood the offense. They love the way he was understanding defense, right? But when you're in a practice situation, you're not getting hit, and that fear of getting hit isn't there. It's easy to be comfortable.
Well, not only that, I mean, he's a smart kid. You're right. He knows what that offense is. He knows how to handle that offense. But my good friend and our good friend, Julio Caravetta, the color analyst for the Lions games, Julio always says, and this guy played quarterback at the pro level, you're going from 25 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. You can never duplicate game speed in practice. And you're right. All of a sudden now you got guys who want to rip your head off. Well, technically you can't do that anymore, but you get the idea. They want to hurt you. They want to put you on the ground. And you've got everything now happening at warp speed. You have to adjust. And you know it's crazy. Whatever sport you play, whether it's football, whether it's hockey, you name it, the decisions are always the same. Basketball, same thing. The decisions are always the same, whether you're playing junior high or if you're playing at the pro level. But what happens, that time to make those decisions gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Absolutely. So we'll see at 0-2. And on top of that, you play Montreal next, very aggressive defense, and then you play the defending Grey Cup champions after that in Winnipeg. So a tough 2 first games to get things started for Michael O'Connor, but you don't always get to pick your opportunities, and we wish him well. We both know him well. Great kid, works his tail off. Hopefully he winds up having some success. We mentioned the Stampeders at 0-2. Edmonton, 0-2. Hamilton, 0-2. Ottawa, 1-0. What's going on?
Okay, this is where I get to gloat a little bit because when we came on here 3 weeks ago, you talked about who's going to be the number one team in the CFL. Oh, it's the Hamilton Tigers. It's Hamilton. Oh, Hamilton. My pick was Winnipeg. So far, Winnipeg has looked pretty good. Hamilton, their offensive line concerns. I mean, they made a quarterbacking switch in the last game, bringing in bringing in Dane Evans for Jeremiah Mazzoli. And I thought Davis Sanchez on the TSN panel nailed it. He said, hey, this ain't about quarterbacking. Dane Evans came in, and guess what? He wasn't the savior because their offensive line right now is porous. They have no rhythm whatsoever on offense. I think Hamilton is not going to live up to the billing that all these so-called experts had of them at the start of the year.
Well, look, it's going to be about how fast it takes that offensive line to find some chemistry because that's so important. They got Chris Van Zyl back, but they made 4 changes on that line last week. Not a recipe for success. Edmonton, meanwhile, their offensive tackle play, they've been through like 6 different tackle bodies since what was supposed to be coming in the front door at the start of training camp. So those guys haven't figured it out. Trevor Harris doesn't look confident. He's not getting the ball to Greg Ellingson.
Let me throw this to you because you're the quarterback connoisseur, the savant. I mean, they've got some weapons on it. I mean, Wilder's a good running back. You've got Ellingson, who I think is a stud. You've got, Walker. There's another stud. You got depth receivers as well. They've got people there that are game changers, that are playmakers. What's going on? Is it as simple as Trevor Harris?
Like I said, I think it's the offensive line play, particularly on the edges at the offensive tackle spots. I think those guys are struggling, and Harris has not been able to be comfortable at all. He's trying to get the ball out really fast. He's not getting the ball into Ellingson's hands at all. He hasn't had nearly enough targets, as you say. So, different reasons for all these 3 teams having problems. But when you look at really all 3 of them, a common denominator is O-line play right now.
What about Sewell talking about the fact that,
oh, yeah.
You hit Harris a couple times, and he folds. Do you think there's anything to that?
Well, yeah, and he's been getting hit a lot. And I'm not going to suggest that he folds. Look, there's a lot of quarterbacks that struggle when you knock them off their spot, right? I mean, that's not a new concept for quarterback play. But, yeah, you're certainly seeing it. Certain guys have a level of athleticism that they can get around that. Maybe Trevor Harris doesn't. But either way, all 3 of those teams, it's not going to get better till they fix their offensive line play. Let's talk a bit about the BC Lions. Mike Riley's been taking some snaps last couple weeks or a couple days in practice, so he's slowly getting healthier. We expect him to start this weekend. CFL Player of the Week, 1 of 3. The defense looks awesome, and the kicking game is in disarray right now.
All right, let's start with the defense. First off, last 6 quarters, this is a defense that allowed 10 points. They've had 5 interceptions. They haven't allowed a touchdown in the last 6 quarters of play games. Bo Levi Mitchell, I know he was banged up. Cody Fajardo as well. I love what they're doing on defense. You're talking about 6 first-year CFL starters. There's a lot of athleticism on that defense. They're tall, they're athletic, they're lanky, they got speed. I like them because of the fact that they fly to the football, both in terms of supporting the running game and when the football's in the air. These guys go up there and they act like it's their football, like they're the receivers. I love what I'm seeing out of the defense right now, playing with a lot of aggressiveness. And I think this unit could be not only the story of the BC Lions, but by the end of the year, this could be the story of the CFL.
Well, when you look at what's happened with this BC Lions defense and just the amount of turnover that they have had, and their top 5 defensive linemen, 4 of them are first-timers in the CFL. You look at their secondary on the field side there, both guys had an interception of Bo Levi Mitchell, and I get that he was hurt, but those were fantastic catches, both players making plays in the ball. New players in the CFL. You've got a linebacker in Bola Combo who has rarely been a full-time starter in this league. You got
Williams.
You got Williams, who is a rookie, hasn't played football in 4 years. The fact that they put this entire group, they were all big questions defensively. They look really good. You've got to give full marks to Neil McAvoy and Ryan Rigmaiden on the personnel staff for bringing these guys in, and for Rick Campbell for getting them to find some chemistry early. Missing a coach because he's lost his D-line coach.
Well, one of the things that Rick Campbell, they got Claudel Lewis running the D-line, the former BC Lion defensive lineman, so he's working with the D-line. But the one thing that they really stressed was having a defense that is simple yet aggressive, and that simplicity with that defense allows them to play with a lot of aggression. They don't have to sit there and kind of think through things pre-snap. They just go out there, they see what they got, and they just go out there and do it. I really like this defense. Like I said, to me, it could be one of the bigger stories of the CFL this year.
So the Lions have struggled in the kicking game with field goals, especially. You know that. They made a change at kicker. They cut the Japanese kicker, the global, and they've brought in 2...
Takuro Yamasaki.
There you go. And they brought
Yamasaki. Hi, domo arigato.
Felix Menard-Briere is one of 2 kickers. They brought in Jimmy Camacho, the other. Both have had a little bit of run around the league a little bit, but this week they weren't able to practice with the team. They've been kicking on their own at the Lions facility. One of those guys in all likelihood is going to be the field goal kicker, and Stefan Flintoff is going to come off the practice roster to punt. So if you're Rick Campbell and you haven't been able to effectively kick field goals in the first 2 weeks of the season, how do you approach this week?
Well, look at the way they approached that third down situation in Calgary.
Oh.
When it was 3rd and 6, they kick a field goal, they go up by 9, make it a 2-score game. They don't even want to punt the football in the end zone. They just said, we're going to try to go for it on 3rd down. Rick Campbell told us after the game, hey, I have faith in my defense. And that told you something a little bit about what he thought where his kicking game was at, maybe even his coverage units and his punting game, because they could have kicked the ball in the end zone, try to get that single point to make it a 9-point lead.
Or inside the 5.
Or inside the 5. So it tells you a little bit about just how much confidence he has in that defensive unit. And, of course, they clutched up and they won the football game.
This week, games coming up. And do we need to talk about Riley anymore? I mean,
No.
Impressive what he did.
He's
and we're going to move on from the injury report stuff.
No, it's just quiet. That's what I love. All these people on Twitter and social media, hey, they didn't list him as a starter. Hey, if you're betting big bucks, if you're betting like a nickel or a dime on this game and people know what that means, then you know what we're talking about. You're doing your homework. Maybe you're staying away from the game. Maybe you're not sitting there relying on an injury report. Come on.
I know.
And then, I guarantee you, like all those people on social media ripping the league and this, they probably never even made a bet in their life.
No, I'm sure they didn't. I am sure they didn't. Easy target, though. So let's go through this week's CFL schedule. You've got 0-2 Edmonton coming in to take on BC, and we've talked about the problems Edmonton's having along that offensive line and where Trevor Harris is. Is Edmonton due for a breakout, or do the Lions win this game?
No, the Lions win this game. I think they win this game probably by at least 10 points.
Wow, confident.
I think their offense produced against Calgary, just couldn't put the ball in the end zone. I think this time around they put the ball in the end zone, and this will be Lions by 10 plus.
Montreal at Calgary, and a lot of people were picking against Montreal this week. I picked them to win, but people felt that because it was their first game, look, they were one of the great success stories in the CFL last year with Vernon Adams. You didn't know how that was going to be sustained this year. They've made some changes, but because everybody else had a game up on them, you thought maybe it wasn't going to be as good. These guys looked fantastic. Baron Miles, the defensive coordinator, was bringing the house on a regular basis. Like, what are we expecting in Calgary?
Take Montreal and take Montreal to cover. I love what Kahari Jones does with that team, the passion they play with, the fun they play with. Here's the other thing, too. This tells you a little bit about how Calgary is in trouble. What do we see with the Stampeders? You talk about every year the Stampeders, they get these pieces that are missing. They usually go to the American college ranks, pull some kids in, NFL cuts, whatever. The fact that they're re-signing Calvin McCarty and bringing in Sean Lemon,
it tells you a lot.
Tells you a little bit about where the and hey, great pros, but I'm just telling you right now, they're on the back 9 of their careers, so it tells you a little bit about where the Stampeders are in terms of their personnel. Yeah,
they're not the depth we're used to seeing, and maybe a little bit of desperation there. You've got Winnipeg at Toronto. Now, Toronto changed, or sorry, I shouldn't say they changed. They did get Nick Arbuckle into the game. Nick Arbuckle took first-team reps in practice on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the plan is to give McLeod Bethel-Thompson the reps and then make a decision after that. Does it matter against Winnipeg?
No, it's just Winnipeg right now just looks too good. I mean, I love what they have defensively. You got Jefferson, Big Hill, among others, leading the charge on defense. They just look right now the team to beat. I said it at the start of the year, Winnipeg. The people were saying Hamilton, don't listen to the other people. I'm telling you, Winnipeg, and it was Winnipeg that looked good the first 2 weeks. I like the Bombers.
I hate the fact that right now we were agreeing on all 3 picks, which is not good radio. It's not good television. We got to figure that out.
The quarterbacking situation with Toronto, they got some great receivers. Well, it's Calgary's receiving core from 2 years ago, but I just like Winnipeg. It's just they're too tough.
There you go. And Ottawa in Saskatchewan. Look, Ottawa looked very impressive week 1 defensively.
Their defense looked great.
Offensively, they just kind of hung on. Not so good. We'll see how much healthier and better Matt Nichols is this week as they go into Saskatchewan to take on the 0-2 Riders. Is there an upset here, or is this Saskatchewan?
2-0 Riders.
Sorry, did I say 0-2? I meant 2-0.
Yes, the 2-0 Riders.
2 unbeaten teams here.
Well, I just like what Saskatchewan is doing. They're playing with a lot of confidence. Yeah, they lose Shaq Evans, great receiver, but tells you a little bit. You talked about the receiving depth. Terrell Jana, the kid out of Virginia, was their number 6 receiver. He gets bumped up perhaps now to number 5. So it tells you a little bit about the Canadian depth that they have at receiver. The kid from North Vancouver, Braden Linnaeus, pardon me. I believe that this kid is going to have a breakout year this year for the Riders. He looks really good.
Well, he already has through 2 games. He's trimmed down and he's trying to be more of a receiver and less of a tight end. And he elevated when Shaq Evans went out in the last game. And I love the story. I coached against him when he was in grade 10 and 11, just a fabulous player, and glad to see him doing well. Another University of Washington Husky. I know Michael won't like to hear that. But I'm going to go the upset just because we can't just pick the same all the time. I am picking Saskatchewan to overlook Ottawa and for Ottawa to move to 2-0.
I can buy that.
No, don't buy it.
No, I can buy it. I can understand your reasoning because if you look at the way Ottawa's defense played, their defense was outstanding. I just don't think they have enough on offense. But hey, if they get a couple of turnovers, maybe a big play on special teams, who knows? An old
You're
football
taking
coach.
Saskatchewan.
I'm taking Saskatchewan.
Okay, I'm taking
not
Ottawa,
backing down. I'm just giving you credit for once.
All right.
I'm saying this. In a football game, there are 5 big plays, right? If you can be on the right side of those 5 big plays by owning 3 or 4 of them, you're in pretty good shape.
You heard it right there. I don't know how you put an analytical equation on that or make that fantasy, but 5 big plays. We need a prop bet to determine which those 5 plays are. We got to come up with something like that. Who got the 5 big plays?
You need probably a turnover, maybe a special teams play, turnover on downs. Those are the type of things that decide a football game.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for listening. We are going to do this again next Tuesday at 5 o'clock, and pretty soon we are creeping towards the start of the NFL regular season. We will be a full television-style production. I will be in Tampa for that one. So I'm looking forward to the start of the NFL season and for us to get this show fully live. See you on TV.
It'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait.
Football with Farhan and Moj. Thanks for listening.